Hello and welcome. Thank you for coming. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones if you have them. And I just want to thank SIEGECon for inviting me today. And let's get started. My name is Marcus Montgomery. I am a game designer. I've been a game designer for about 18 years. I've been in the industry for nearly 20. I've previously worked at Sega. I've worked at Sony. I've worked at Namco. I've worked at some work-for-hire studios. I've most recently moved into the free-to-play space, and I worked at Limbic Software, makers of Zombie Gunship Survival for iOS and Android, and we just released Zombie Gunship Revenant for the AR platform on iOS 11. Diversity in tech has been an elephant in the room for many, many years. It's been talked about in very small circles, but in most recent years it's become much more prevalent, much more in the news. In 2015, Erica Baker, she was talking to a few of her colleagues, and they started talking about salary. And she was working at Google at the time, and she made a spreadsheet and said, hey, why don't we just all enter our salary information on this spreadsheet? This kicked up a hornet's nest in the tech sector. Everyone was like, oh my God, how are you going to put out all this salary information? But what also came up was that Erica herself had been being passed over for bonuses. This single act exposed the intersectionality of problems within the tech sector. The gender pay gap, the treatment of women of color, and it also mostly showed the power of our employees. After this event, the media went crazy. They started trying to find demographic information for all the big tech giants. They got information from Google and HP, Apple, Facebook. And for months, diversity staffing reports started filling my timeline, just in everyone's timeline across America. The IGDA did its own study. It does this developer satisfaction survey. They started to track gender and racial demographics. And we saw that the numbers in the game industry are similar to that in the tech sector. Each of these articles that were written about this trumpeted the lack of diversity and just how it was just waning and not as good as it should be. They kept talking about all these problems. All these problems and no discussion of how we might fix this. There was no discussion of what sort of actions we could take. Most of the challenges that came up fell in one of three areas. Where does one find a diverse talent pool? They didn't know where to look. One thing we know about this industry, you hire who you know. So if you don't know any diverse people, where will they come from? There's also accusations that maybe the talent pool is too small. There's not enough people around there that you can find to actually work at your company. And then there was all this analysis that there's no real pipelines from diverse sources into careers in tech. In 2011, 4 years before this Google spreadsheet drama, my wife was working at EA. And she was asked to be on the cover of Black Enterprise magazine. After this happened, she kept getting all these emails from various parents saying, oh my God, I didn't know black people were in games. My child loves games. How did you get to where you are? Email after email. And every email that came in, my wife did her best to respond and to give just advice. Can you hear me in the back okay? All right, perfect. Every message that she responded to, it brought her joy. To be able to know that she was helping someone. And I can only imagine what sort of happiness this brought to the parents and their children. My wife has inspired more than one sort of school report on her career. The impact of this cover on these parents and these children is immeasurable. Since then, my wife has gone on to speak at NASA. She's spoken at Google, and she was even asked to go to the White House. Since the cover first released, she started off as a senior artist at EA, and her career has blossomed as she started to talk more about diversity in tech. and she's now an art manager at Double Fine. What other hidden talent is in our industry? Who else can inspire others? As a game designer, I like to fix problems. Most of the time it's problems I introduce, but I like to fix problems. My wife's journey started to give me an idea of how we may address these challenges that were posed before. It's hard to be what you can't see. I'll say that again. It is hard to be what you can't see. All these articles critiqued the lack of diversity. They talk about what isn't there. But we should celebrate the diverse talent we do have. And if we do that, maybe we can inspire others to join us. If we do this, can we address all the challenges posed in all those articles talking about the lack of diversity? I wanted to create a place where we could celebrate and inspect the careers of diverse game developers. Much like what the cover of Black Enterprise did for my wife, could we replicate that for other talented, diverse people in the industry? And this is when the idea of We Are Game Devs began to form. WeAreGameDevs.com became a website dedicated to celebrating and profiling diverse game developers. I wanted to not only be a vehicle for exposure, but a resource for those in the industry as well as those aspiring to get into the industry. Not only would it illuminate diverse people in the industry, but we should pull back the curtain on the industry itself. With each developer interview, we focus on 4 key areas: the photo, the present, the past, and paying it forward. When you first come to the We Are Games Devs landing page, you are overwhelmed with faces. This is intentional. I wanted it to feel like an army. It was important for each photo to feel like one of many. When you feel different than others, it's good to be able to see yourself amongst a sea of others who look like you. Who you are and what you look like can be the first step to inspiring someone. The meat of each interview really centers on the present, the past, and paying it forward. When we talk about the present, we really want to know where they are right now. What is your job title? What is your day-to-day like? What are you currently working on? The goal is to get the reader to see themselves in this developer's shoes. What is their day like? Can they see themselves doing this? Is this interesting to them? Many newcomers don't even know what a 3D modeler does. What does a server engineer? What does an assistant producer do? We want to paint a picture of what it might be like to be that developer. This is Terrence. He is currently an art director at Zynga. However, when I first interviewed him, he was a freelance artist. I had no idea what a freelance artist did. I had an idea, but I had to bring out in the interview what that was like. I've had a salaried position my entire life, but working contract to contract, it's a completely different model, and it's completely viable in this industry. This is Robin. She is the CEO of Phenomena. While what I thought would be a job focused on building a talent for her studio, helping set project direction, I came to realize that a lot of her job is also just fundraising, figuring out how to make sure people can be paid. After we establish who they are, it's very important to dig into a developer's history. Where did you grow up? What first piqued your interest in this discipline? How did you get your first job? Did you go to school? If you did, where? We wanted to dig into developers' past. We need to determine how they got to where they are now. It's a chance to make comparisons to your own life. Did this developer come from a small town? It's very possible the reader is in a small town right now. Is this developer self-taught? There are many people who cannot afford school, but are highly driven. One thing VR Game Devs taught me is that every developer's origin story is different. They're like fingerprints. We all have them, but the patterns differ. However, when you hear their stories, sometimes you hear familiarities, and you can draw comparisons to the commonality in your own life. This is Sach. Sach grew up in Sri Lanka. When she graduated from high school, there was a war going on, so she was unable to go to university. They closed it. She ended up working in advertising. There she saw the marketing artist creating all this art. She said, that looks like much more fun than what I was doing. There was a war going on. She was unable to go to school. At that point, she looked to schools in the States. She ended up going to San Jose State, majored in art, and is a fine artist. She's worked at Zynga and is now a principal artist at a VR company in Marin County. This is Howard. He is a UI artist at EA. He's also a recipient of the DACA program. How many people out there are in similar situations to his? He had the courage to reveal his status on our site. And in doing so, he could inspire one other person to do that. It is completely viable. This is Sam. Sam grew up in Torrance, California. He was an original focus tester for the first PlayStation 1. He then networked his way into a QA position at Crystal Dynamics. He's since worked at Insomniac, Sony Bend, and is a senior game designer. He started college, never finished. And that's not unheard of in our industry. The last part, and one of the other key parts of this, is paying it forward. Once we understand your backstory, we need to know how the developer remains relevant moving forward into this industry. This is how you keep getting jobs. We ask questions like, what sort of trends do you see on the horizon? What new tech is interesting you? What is a favorite tool that you like to use? New tech, new trends, these are the foundations of our industry. New hardware and new techniques are popping up year after year. You must learn to be able to read the trends to stay on top of new tricks. Discussion of these topics are good for aspiring developers. And it's especially good for those who are seasoned as well. We need to share these spaces where we learn. The Gamma Sutras, the Twitters, the hashtags, any sort of Tumblr pages, anything you follow. The shared resources and understanding of where these are strengthens our industry. This is why we come to places like Siege, because we want to learn, we want to share. This is Caleb. He's previously worked at Harmonix in EA. He was an art director at EA. He is currently an art director of a small indie studio in San Mateo called Spirit Walk. I love this interview with him. It's one of my favorite interviews. He gave so many tips on how to get into game audio. He shared the websites he follows, the Twitter hashtags he works with, the podcasts he follows. And if you want to become a game audio designer in the game industry, you should listen to everything he said. This is Teresa. She is the CEO of her own VR company called Gates Games. She shared a wealth of VR websites she reads every day. And as we know, VR is constantly changing. She has to read that every day to make sure that her company is moving in the right direction. This is Tristan. He is a senior animator at Sledgehammer Games, maker of Call of Duty. He gave some of the best advice to anyone in the game industry. Be a team player, accountable, passionate with your craft, and don't be a dick. There's no secret sauce to the creation of We Are Game Devs. The magic that makes it go is the people who are interviewed. They are the stars. They are the focus. Their stories are what make it special. I want We Are Game Devs to be a resource for students, for parents, recruiters, and professionals in this industry. I'm still unsure who the target audience is, but what I do know is I'm happier that the project exists. Ultimately, I want it to be a place where we humanize game developers and we demystify the process of getting into the game industry. So let's look back at those problems that were posed earlier, and how does We Are Game Devs stack up to addressing them? Where do we find diverse talent? Well, the website itself is a database of hireable people. Small talent pool. I cannot speak to this, but I hope with every profile added, we start to grow this talent pool. You can see that there's people out there. We'll inspire others to join our ranks. We Are Game Devs itself, though, does not address the pipeline issue. However, it can be a resource to anyone who is along the pipeline trying to get into our industry. So when you think about diversity in games, it can be overwhelming. But how do we create change? Improving the diversity disparity is a complicated problem. These issues cannot be conquered with just one website. You may believe you have no influence to affect change. However, you do have a sphere of influence, no matter how small. If you're a C-suite level or an in-the-trenches employee, you have influence. To think you can't make change undervalues who you are, and it limits the prospect of others like you. Here are some suggestions on how you might be able to implement long-lasting change. There are many nonprofit organizations targeting underrepresented groups now and turning them into game creators. There's Dames Making Games, Girls Make Games, Pixels, even Black Girls Code. Each of these organizations has a strong mission dedicated to increasing representation in the industry we all love. They need volunteers, they need mentors, and they need financial backing. These organizations would benefit strongly from continued and integrated support. Which brings me to the next part. Companies need to allow their employees paid time off to volunteer with organizations like the ones listed above. It's hard to support an after-school program if you're not allowed to leave work without fear of repercussions financially. As employees, we can also lobby for this sort of initiative. We need to create pipelines. There are many colleges and universities across this nation who graduate well-qualified, diverse applicants. We can reach out to them, build relationships. We can source our talent from them. These pipelines need to provide meaningful experiences within the organization. Paid internships that provide real work experience, mentorship, and lifelong camaraderie. Because we all know this business is really based on who you know. And if we allow these outsiders to become our insiders and friends, in doing so we can ensure that they can get work not just now, but for the rest of their careers. We need to allow students to shadow employees. We need to pull back the curtain on game development. We need to let them see what real development is about. Once you've hired this diverse talent, we need to provide training for them. We need to help them excel within our organization. Show dedication to your employees, and they will reward you by staying. And they will most likely recruit other diverse talent to your company. Lord knows I have steered diverse talent away from inhospitable environments. If you create a place that is welcoming and tolerant, this place will advertise itself. You can see this as Slack. Slack has been championing diversity and inclusion for a very long time. And they still continue to do it today. If your company is actively leading the charge of change, speak up. There are companies who have started this process, and they're trying to address inclusion, but these efforts at inclusion are like bullet points on a website at the bottom. It needs to go in the forefront. They need to talk about it publicly. If they do so, it'll become infectious. HP has been pretty good about it. They're talking about it. They want to throw money behind it. EA, they supported a Girls Make Games camp just this past summer, like 2 years ago. But when I went looking for it, it was on some page, way behind everything else. They have the opportunity to talk to Polygon. They have the opportunity to talk to VentureBeat. They have the opportunity to talk to GameSpot. They need to push these things. If you have an effort in these fields, let people know. Speak up on it. Be loud. Be bold. There's one organization that I'm actively involved with that addresses the pipeline issue directly. It's called Gameheads. They're located in Oakland, California. Gamehead uses game development and DevOps to prepare and engage and train low-income youth and youth of color in the Bay Area. It's a year-long program where students get to develop their own game under the guidance of our team. We expose the students to each discipline of game development: art, game design, audio, programming, and production techniques. But what makes Gamehead special is our mentor program. Each student is paired with a video game professional associated with their discipline. The mentors meet with their students weekly and provide guidance and support as their teams build their projects. This past year, we had some very strong representation from 2 companies. Both Double Fine and Big Fish stepped up in a big way. They have pushed it internally. They have given their mentors the space to help. Gameheads in Oakland also had a partnership with Rad3. They actually took some of our students over the summer and let them work in their offices, allowed their workers to actually sit with the students, teach them Unity, and help them develop their own games. At the end of the year, we have a showcase, and this is where we show off the projects of the kids have been making throughout the summer. And I am going to attempt to play this video, and the audio is not going to come through the TV because tech. But I'll try and push my speaker up as loud as possible so that we can hear it. One of those projects has actually been approved for Steam Greenlight. Gameheads also has a middle school program, exposes the middle school students to some light game development concepts and learnings. This program then feeds into our classic program. The classic program focuses on kids ages 15 to 24. These students range from high schoolers prepping to go into college to older students who didn't find the traditional school path a fit. We actually have some college students, or ones that have just entered the college most recently. But what's great about GameHeads is that you can see the growth of these students. This is Rebecca. I've known Rebecca for years, before she even got to GameHeads. I met her when we volunteered for Black Girls Code at one of their workshops. Rebecca was exposed to coding at that place, and she took to it like a fish to water. But Black Girls Code is kind of focused towards the middle school age, and she was beginning to age out of the curriculum. She found GameHeads at that point. This year, her mentor was Key from Double Fine, and she's blossomed into a capable programmer. She has been the sole programmer on 2 game projects at GameHeads. She just this year graduated from high school and is now going to Cal State East Bay. This is Tabari. Tabari is a self-taught artist with some raw talent. He didn't graduate high school, and he didn't continue on in higher education. He's been with the program for 2 years, and he was paired this year with an animator from Double Fine named Chris Lamb. He's since re-enrolled in college and has been getting A's ever since. GameHeads is a program directly addressing the pipeline issue. We're using games to just use it as a carrot to drive these kids into school and to give them exposure to actual people working in the industry, and hopefully build relationships that will help them if they choose to pursue a career into games. We're trying to expand the program into direct internships for students. And with that, we'll be providing a very strong beginning to end pipeline, albeit one class at a time. The mentors are the backbone of this program. And what is encouraging is that we're seeing the mentor program grow. It is an indication that the industry itself wants to see change. So we must get involved and create, and we must get involved and contribute to make a meaningful change. If we only pursue one of the solutions mentioned, we only treat one of the symptoms that ails this game industry. We must take a multi-pronged approach. We cannot fix a system overnight that has developed for over decades. It will take a long-standing commitment. I do not run a game company. I'm not in charge of hiring. And I can't make a direct change in policies, but I can choose to tackle this from a different angle. This is why I started We Are Game Devs. It's why I work with GameHeads. I believe it's hard to be what you can't see. And this aphorism rings so true when you're discussing diversity. So take a moment and consider what more can you be doing. What can you do to change the culture and tone and inclusion at your company? I speak of We Are Game Devs and GameHeads only to make the point that we can all affect change within our own spheres of influence. And if you want to do more, let's chat. I don't have all the ideas, but if you have some, bring them to me. And maybe together we can make meaningful change. And maybe we can make some meaningful change to this industry. I use Slide Carnival for the template here. It's a great website. I suggest if you have your own presentations, look at it. And that is it. This is my contact information. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. Yes?
Let me speak up.
Sure.
So I actually work at Ideas United here in Atlanta, and we have teamed up with Google Play. We are currently sponsoring a program called Infinite Deviation Games, and we are looking to publish and fund 3 games that will be made over the next year that specifically address diversity and inclusivity in gaming. So we are looking for developers who maybe haven't had their voices heard yet, maybe who feel like there aren't a lot of people for them to look at in the gaming world. Make games that would appeal to those audiences. Please, please, please submit your ideas. All you need is a game proposal. You don't have to have any sort of like playable demo or anything like that. And 3 of those teams, like I said, are getting funding from Google Play. So
That's fantastic.
you just throw that out there.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you for coming. I hope this was helpful.